Rick Horrow, sports professor, keeping score beyond the scoreboard. Got a special treat today because usually we have a guy that, especially at this primetime conference here in Toronto, which we have a series of interviews, running a team, doing facility management somewhere, involved in stadium stuff. We got a guy that does all of that, but also he has a kid who's going to be a world-class hockey player and better than this athlete ever was. Peter Lukko, how are you?
Good. How are you?
All right. So we talk about you ran the Flyers, you ran Spectacor, you're now involved in Oakview Group. You're the alternate governor of the Panthers. There are a whole lot of things going on. So how did you first get your start in this business?
Well, I really was at University of Massachusetts, sport management program. I took an internship at the New Haven Coliseum. Was hired off that internship. Then from there, I fast forward. We actually worked in Providence, where Lou Lamorello was the athletic director.
Of course.
Was just an incredible man, great mentor of mine, and still a great friend. And then came to work for Ed Snyder in 1985.
So there is a luck involved in it, but also the persistence. But to work with someone who is iconic enough like Ed Snyder, and to learn and to let's talk a little bit about Ed first. Past last year,
right?
What was his real special claim to fame? How did he get so good? Maybe.
Yeah, he was a visionary and just a world-class entrepreneur. And where people saw nothing, he saw something. Yeah. Just the history, the reason the Flyers came to be, he was at the Garden in New York and saw people lined up around the Garden and said, "What's going on tonight?" And they said, "A hockey game." And they said, "Really? Well, they must be really good." He goes, "No, they're in last place." And then he applied for an expansion team and got that.
One of the original expanded six.
Yes.
So 6 off of 6.
Yeah, when the league doubled in size.
67?
67.
Yeah.
And Sports Illustrated did they evaluated the teams in the expansion, and Philadelphia was voted most likely to not succeed. And that was Ed, where people might not think could succeed, they did. And finding a way, great marketer, promoter, and used all of his resources, and I think that's something we could all learn.
Iconic franchise, Stanley Cup champions, but Bobby Clark and Barber and Van Impe and all of those guys when they beat the Russians, I mean, that was an amazing time. That probably brought hockey to a mainstream audience when they didn't even remember, early 70s, right?
Yeah. It's what's interesting about it is, the Flyers at the time were probably the most hated team in the league. Yeah. But if you recall, the Russians had come in and beat the Canadians, and this was the save face game. So it was the only time in the history of Flyers that all of North America was rooting for the team.
Yeah, but successfully.
But successfully, and they came out and pulled it out.
And your career has been incredibly varied. It's been running a franchise, but it's also really the face of facility management for the longest time. So talk about that industry generally.
Yeah, it's I love the industry. I've always, as a kid when I was playing, always liked to walk the venue and look at the venue. I think it's an industry where, as a career, you're working while people are playing, and I think you have to understand that if you get in the business. But what makes it so great is you're bringing entertainment to people, whether it's hockey or basketball or NCAA stuff or the circus or U2 or Springsteen. It's pretty cool, and it's really fun to see an arena that's static. Not that they look bland, but they're empty. They're empty. To see how an arena can have so many looks to it based on the show, it's pretty compelling.
So you did it with SMG, you did it with Spectacor, you learned from the best in the business, and then you became the best in the business, and now you're doing it with Oakview Group. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a partnership of Tim Lewicki, MSG, Irving Azoff. They had asked me to join. I'm a partner in the firm, but Irving and Tim, it's like anything else. I always wanted to work together. Yeah. When Tim left Toronto here, Tim had told me, I gotta love Tim. I mean, he told me about 8 months ago, sit tight, I think we can do this. What do you think? Do you think it'll work? And I'd said, yeah. So my first year, I was 50-50 with Florida and the company, and now I'm almost basically full-time with the company. But and again, we were partners at Spectacle with Irving in the 80s with MCA Records.
Yeah.
So it's really friends coming together and two great people. And really our alliance, we've aligned 27 of the largest facilities in America, not to manage them day to day, but to supplement their booking and sponsorships.
So the real key is the vertical integration of bringing events into those facilities and sponsors that a one-off won't be able to produce.
Right. For instance, we did a $40 million deal with Walmart, and that is a deal. There's 72 million people in the alliance. 72 million people go through the buildings in the alliance, and this is a sponsor that would not have done just Chicago, that would have done just New York or just Philadelphia, that saw the 72 million people and could get them into the community in the way they wanted to be.
So broadly defined, this is a time that we're spending a lot of time on that the next couple of days. Taxpayer money for arenas, public-private partnerships, arenas and stadiums in this era almost have a negative connotation to them. But as a development opportunity, as a fun place, and as a social gathering place, comment on all that first.
Yeah, I think, there's a little backswell of, all right, should we be spending, money on these facilities, although new facilities are being built.
Yeah.
And, government municipalities are more creative. They're funded on the taxes that these facilities will generate, which are for real, and there is a track record. So over the years, so I think it's more creative municipal funding in terms of sometimes it's a hotel tax or car tax where you're taxing the tourists, not the people locally. So I think there still is an appetite. It's just in a different manner, and nobody knows more about that than you do. You've done that your whole life.
By the way, I'm 22 years old. I just look 60-something.
Yeah. So you've been doing it 22 years.
Yeah,
you just
right.
came out of the womb.
Out of the womb, right there doing it.
Doing a TIF deal.
Yeah. First thing I wanted to do. Man, tell me about TIF. But the whole notion of what this means to a community, every mayor you talk to anecdotally says it's the easiest thing for me to get behind, but it's the hardest thing to explain.
Yeah. And I think what cities need to do is look at what other cities have done. Obviously, look what Tim did in L.A.
Yeah.
And I was at the Coliseum for years. That whole end of Figueroa was in trouble, and now that's revitalized. And now there is a downtown L.A. where there was never one before. We talked earlier about the building in London, Ontario that we were involved in a B market that 3 years ago, London sold their first $1 million condominium. It's across the street from the arena, which was a dead section. And I think where we've morphed, and this, Rick, is it's now more than just a standalone arena. It's development around it. Look at Detroit. They've built a city within the city, which is really, really amazing. And so I think we're probably smarter than we were years ago, where we were just so facility concentric.
And now you have international organizations that have come together to be creative and talk about the economies of scale of bookings, of finance, of development opportunities. So the world is a lot different, a lot more creative than it was 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Look at the consolidation of the concert industry from regionals to national tours. So now when you're building your building and looking at contractually obligated income streams, if you do a promoter deal where they're guaranteeing you 20 shows, it's this massive corporation guaranteeing the shows, not the local guys. Effective as he was, what kind of balance sheet did he have? So that's all changed the dynamics of our business.
By the way, one thing, you hear Lukko and he's talking some really prophetic stuff, but and now everybody says that, but he's talking stuff like this 20 years ago that nobody ever knew. So I'm paying homage to the man who's, by the way, an appearance fee on this interview. So hopefully really quick on this. So you didn't.
You already fed me dessert.
I did feed you dessert. You didn't know it.
Stole it from the tray.
Yeah, I did. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, now I don't pay for anything from him. So you don't quit your day job, but you're working with the Panthers, which is challenging because everybody understands that you're now kind of front and center in a new facility development model. But you're also trying to make sure that South Florida embraces the Panthers.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah, and I really believe in South Florida, and it's a great market. There's 5 million people there, so why not?
Yeah.
I think two, the team is a history of losing. So the team is going to need to be one of those teams that's in the playoffs 5 out of 6, 5 out of 7 years. That I think that is important.
Problem with that is, though, you got to wait 7 years for that to have any impact. I mean, what do you do now?
Well, in the meantime, I think you get in the community, build rinks, build youth hockey, and just build it from scratch. I.e., perfect example. Well, Ed Snyder in '67. There was one rink in Philly. Now there's over 60, and look what Jeff Vinnick is.
Tampa.
I mean, it's just tremendous what that organization's doing. It's so impressive.
So, does it give you a source of pride to know that your kid is a world-class hockey player? Tell us about your kid.
Yeah, I've got one playing at Sacred Heart University, and
for Bobby Valentine. Is Bobby Valentine
still
the athletic director?
Yes, he is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've interviewed him. We're going to do that again.
Yeah, Bobby's there. What's interesting is they play in the Bridgeport building, which I'm involved with the Islanders, so it's kind of fun. I kind of help get the deal done.
Do you upcharge the opponents to make it easy?
Yeah. Tilt the ice, we do it all. Heat the locker rooms of the visiting team.
There you go.
All the stuff. All the stuff I learned from Bob Clark.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got it all. He's still got some in his pocket you're never going to see.
And then my son's playing in the East Coast League now, so playing hockey and enjoying it and having a good time.
What does Peter Lukko do 5 years from now?
I think we'll still Oakview. We're all committed. We're all at that right point in our life. We've got a lot of work to do and a lot of adventure and a lot of buildings to build.
So I grew up contemporaneous with Peter Lukko, fantasizing about working with him, and here he is right now. Rick Horrow, sports professor. See you soon.
I'm not that old.